Hi everyone, my name is Annika Deshpande and I'm the co-founder and co-president of Youth for Climate Restoration.
Hi there, my name is Alice and I'm a Youth for Climate Restoration Projects Team Youth Leader at New York City.
Hi, I'm Kylie Solt-Linville and I've been representing climate restoration on social media.
And together we all make Youth for Climate Restoration. In today's presentation, we're going to begin by just talking about the importance of youth in climate restoration and generally in the climate movement, and then specifically talk about what we do actively to make youth more involved and improve youth integration in the climate movement and the climate restoration movement. First, we want to begin by mentioning the fact that youth have and continue to have a very important role in all climate restoration efforts, especially if we look at like a historical lens. Historically, youth have had an ongoing role in every single form of social change we've seen, from the civil rights movement to the Vietnam War, and even in like feminism movements. Even more recently in Arab Spring, youth advocates and youth advocacy made a huge change in all of these movements. The climate restoration movement and the climate change movement is generally no different. Importantly, 85% of young people are at least moderately worried about climate change. That's a huge number, right? 85% of young people actively are worried about climate change. And of those, 45% of youth say that their feelings about climate change adversely affect their everyday functioning, eating, sleeping, or concentrating. That's a huge number as well. And it's very clear to see that in the status quo, we see youth having this huge concern and huge climate anxiety about the climate movement. And ultimately, that's culminated in 39% of youth believing that it's too late to stop climate change now. I think that's why the climate restoration movement specifically calls to youth so much. It changes the narrative from one of mitigation to one of restoration.
So this leads to Youth for Climate Restoration. Next, please. Which is a dynamics youth initiative designed for everyone to be empowered to take meaningful action in the climate restoration movement. We do this by organizing climate restoration workshops, craft workshops to local schools like 4th and 5th graders, as well as interactive art contests to not only expose the idea of net zero and legacy carbon, but also to intertwine people's creative passions to this movement. And so this kind of brings up, as we also saw in the documentary, the elephant in the room. Oh, here it is. Yeah, so this one's named Terry for the 1 teraton or 1 trillion gigatons of legacy carbon in the atmosphere that not enough organizations are talking about, as they're focused more so on reducing emissions instead of acknowledging the resources we have to get rid of the ones already here since the pre-industrial revolution. So from this chart, we see that the United States is the second greatest in contributing to the carbon emissions in the world. And so what even is net zero? Well, it's the idea of reducing or eliminating greenhouse gas emissions, particularly that of carbon dioxide. NASA studies have shown that an increase of a single degree can result in devastating droughts, heat waves, floods that result in massive ecological losses and displace entire communities. So much so that we've developed the term climate migration. So hence, climate restoration is about removing the legacy carbon and methane that is already causing these changes.
Yeah, as I mentioned just before, us and our goal at Youth for Climate Restoration is ultimately moving the conversation from one of mitigation to one of restoration. And that uniquely gives so many youth hope in the face where 39% of youth believe it's already too late. Right? For people that right now in the status quo, because of the carbon that's already in the atmosphere, experience these huge like natural disasters, experience these extreme weather events, it's really demoralizing to see that the goal of climate action is still just net zero. What happens to all of the people, all of the youth around the world who are the biggest stakeholders who know in 10, 50 years, if we just keep the amount of carbon in the atmosphere that we currently have, we would still be seeing these impacts, we would still be seeing these effects on their homelands. So in Youth for Climate Restoration, one of our main goals is by 2030, we want climate restoration to be the primary objective of all climate movements. Right now, net zero holds that place. So ultimately, we do this through 3 methods. The first one is that our overarching goal is always education and youth education and awareness. Ultimately, the second way we improve youth climate education and awareness is through these youth climate organizations and workshops. We reach elementary school and primary school children where they're at, integrating climate restoration into climate curriculums, getting them to understand what climate restoration is at a very early age. Right now, across the world, even across the most progressive school districts, we don't see climate restoration in any sort of climate literacy or climate education. Thus, the third way we do this is by actively engaging youth of our own ages in doing work to actually help people and help the rest of the world raise awareness about the climate crisis. By involving youth and giving youth a platform to speak today and speak to youth on primary school level children about climate restoration, it shows us that our voices really do matter, and it also helps decrease that climate anxiety that we previously talked about. I think an important roadblock to note is that just 0.76% of all climate-related grants are given to youth-led organizations. That's a huge discrepancy, given that youth are the primary stakeholders in the entire climate movement, right? Ultimately, we're the ones who are going to deal with the brunt of all of the CO2 in the atmosphere, and thus, when we make a movement and we make a change, we should have that kind of like backing from the general climate restoration and climate movement. Thank you. Oh, really quickly, we also want to mention that kids may make up only 25% of the population right now, but we are 100% of the future. So at Youth for Climate Restoration, we really try to target youth and make sure that youth, as the 100% of the future, are taken into account, that our opinions are valued and our opinions are weighed against other people's opinions, and our perspectives are consistently shown and consistently represented in the conversation about the climate restoration movement. With that, I want to give it over to Kylie to talk about how social media campaigns uniquely are able to reach youth where they're at.
Okay, so that's exactly right. That's why I started social media, because I figured how best to reach the youth, to give the youth a voice, but to go to where I find the most youth. I personally use a lot of social media, and I see a lot of overwhelming and bad climate stats and things. So meeting Carol Douglas, I learned about climate restoration, and I thought, wow, this is hope, this is hopeful. So actually, in true social media fashion, can I have all of you help me make a video? Can I say, on the count of 3 maybe, I say 1, 2, 3, and then can you guys shout with lots of enthusiasm, restored climate by 2050? I'll say 1, 2, 3, restored climate by 2050. Okay, great practice, and now I'm gonna record it. Okay. And it'll go in a montage. 3, 2, 1. Restored climate by 2050. Okay, great, I love it. And so things as simple as that can do wonders on TikTok, on Instagram, on many social media platforms. I've personally had the most success on TikTok. One of our videos especially gained a lot of traction, and we got over 50,000 signatures on our climate pledge, f4cr.org. Sign the pledge, everybody. I'll be saying it forever till the day I die. But yeah, so I figured, how can I use social media, this power, and use it for good? And I think there's a lot of ways this can translate not just to my life, but to everyone's life. There's a lot of steps that we can all be taking at home. And I think, as some of the stats you mentioned, I figured a lot of people felt hopeless, felt like it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. It feels like we're already past the point of return. Carol asked us earlier if we could hold up a 1 to 5 scale of how doomed we are. A lot of people, I put a 5. A lot of people put a 5, but you know. Peter put a 1, and that 1 is climate restoration. So hopefully we can spread that message on social media and get lots of attention to a solution, climate restoration, removing that CO2 legacy. We aren't doomed. Yeah, I think that's most of what I have to say.
And so now what? We have to start the conversation and ask both your peers who are maybe under the age of 35 or those outside of that age range, how can youth today initiate their own climate restoration movement? And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
So thank you, ladies, for your introduction to Youth for Climate Restoration. I think that just seeing you up here, talking about it and involved in it, thank you, is hopeful for a lot of us. And you have, as your next step, a question: how do you get a youth movement going? And I'm going to put that back to you, because I suspect you're the gals with the answers.
Does anyone have a?
How are you recruiting?
Well, obviously, I mean, this room is important to start with. Obviously, lots of mobilizing faces. But then, as I'm saying, social media, and then you guys also have organized your education. Can you talk about those? What do you do in terms of education and
Yeah, so during these education workshops, I mean, of course, because they're 4th and 5th graders, there's only so much that we can teach them about carbon dioxide without overwhelming them. So really, it's just introducing the concepts so later on, as adults, they're not afraid to talk about environmentalism and climate restoration, but also it's to connect the idea or the themes of climate sciences into really any career, whether it's policy or public health.
Yeah, I think as an organization, a huge way we've been recruiting was originally we started with like a very grassroots level of like putting up flyers at our local schools, and then that's how we kind of started to expand. And then the way we got like people like Alice from all the way in New York, where I'm based in California, was really through like a combination of building those networks out, working very closely with the Foundation for Climate Restoration, building, I guess, credibility for our organization. And I believe you heard about us through your professor, right?
Yeah, I had been like exploring different websites to just find how I could contribute to the climate, and so climate restoration was fortunately in the organization's name. So this website popped up, and I learned that I could sign up, and Annika was like super helpful with the whole transitioning process to the projects team.
Yeah, I think recruitment ultimately came down to like social media, as you said, and then building those networks really through like very localized efforts at first. Like the first few months, we almost entirely recruited just from like within a mile of our own like homes.
Yeah, I think those simple steps, every conversation is important. And I also want to emphasize that for us, it's not really it doesn't feel like a choice, like an option to support climate action efforts or not, climate restoration efforts or not, because like we've known about this issue as long as we've lived, and obviously it's our future, so we'll deal with this issue until it's solved. So yeah.
Great, thank you. What do your friends say? The ones who aren't, for some reason, joining, what's going on there, and what do they think of your being involved in climate restoration?
Personally, a lot of my friends are excited to like my videos. Oh, it's Kylie, can I be in one? Yes, you can be in one. And also, they have a lot of questions about how it works, about what the carbon removal strategies are, X, Y, and Z. So I try to answer those in straightforward, simple answers. I've hopefully gotten good at that. And yeah, just how I make them sign the pledge. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, pretty much. A lot of my friends are really interested into medical sciences. They want to be nurses, they want to be doctors. And so being able to explain how climate restoration is affecting people's health, and how, you know, they are interacting with people who are facing the repercussions of heavy carbon dioxide levels in our very urban city. So it's really relevant today.
Yeah, I think all of my friends are really supportive. Even if they themselves aren't part of Youth for Climate Restoration, a lot of them are involved with tangential climate organizations, and also a lot of them, when we do Youth for Climate Restoration events at our schools, always help out. I live in the Bay Area of California. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar, but they also are really interested in all the new startups that are popping up around us with like carbon capture tech, different carbon removal strategies. So they love to talk to me about that. But yeah, I think generally, at least in my area, all of my friends are super supportive and really interested in seeing like what we're doing, how we're doing it. Yeah, just like Kylie said. Thank you.
Kylie, when you and I started working together, one thing in particular struck me that you said, and that was that you didn't understand how adults are sometimes resistant to the idea. They don't want to believe that it's possible. They're very, very skeptical and resigned. And so the adults like me go out of our way to explain how it's safe and it's natural and all that stuff. And you said, with youth, you don't need to do that. They get it.
I think so, and obviously I don't speak for all youth, and also I'm very fortunate. I live in Bethesda, Maryland. They're very receptive to the idea. But and obviously my friends have questions about how safe it is or natural, but I think we have the answers, and they're straightforward answers, and there definitely is less pushback, I would say, among youth, since we've been learning about climate change in school, in elementary school. It's always been a fact of our lives. So yeah, I would definitely say, first, you don't have to start off with proving climate change is real first, at least with my friends, and then yeah, as long as I explain it straightforward, yeah.
And how do you explain it? I know you're very good at it, or you have done a number of TikToks on it. How do you explain when people say, well, how do we do this? What do you say? Not to put you on the spot, and what?
Would this be ocean iron fertilization, localized?
For instance.
So one of the main strategies I would say as an example would be localized ocean iron fertilization. And I have a lot of, one time I sent Carol a video of, there was like a cave, me if I was a cave person, like trend on TikTok. and I was talking and just like, me do this, me do that. Anyway, so that was me explaining it in silly terms. But to my friends, I would relate it to ice ages and ice age sciences that we've studied, because all of these are natural processes that we've studied. And I would say that we found that as the temperature is lower in these ice ages, so is CO2. And that's exactly what we need to do, lower CO2, the legacy, that's what we need to do now. So they found that the main factor is iron, whoa, psh. And so in these anemic ocean areas, you can put the little iron dust sprinkles, and then the phytoplankton, they grow as a result, and they photosynthesize, which is straightforward. Photosynthesis takes the carbon down, and it works best if it's in a downwelling eddy, and then the carbon goes down, 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 and stays there, which is exactly what we need. And I think that's as simple and straightforward as I can get.
And by the way, if you want to see Kylie's TikTok channel, or the Foundation for Climate Restoration's TikTok channel, which features Kylie, and you do, believe me, you do, write this down, please. It's you get into TikTok and you go to @climate_restoration. You'll be blown away. I'm going to ask one more question and then open it up to the audience. So think of what you might ask these guys with this opportunity. And my last question, if you haven't already mentioned this, is what's most surprised you about your work in climate restoration over the last year or two?
Okay, I think that's a hard question. I think for me, at least, with climate restoration, I think anyone that believes that the climate movement is an issue also believes ideologically in climate restoration, right? Like, I think the skepticism really comes, or like any pushback we've ever faced has really come from like the practical level. And I think that will ultimately always be solved through science, innovation, and technology. And we're seeing that happen right now, especially like in the area where I live. There's a lot of new startups coming up where they're actively improving our carbon removal tech, our carbon removal strategies from a scientific lens. The research is expanding so much more. Like every single single month, you have new papers being published on different ways to remove carbon. I think ultimately climate restoration in and of itself is something that everyone in the climate movement can agree should be the goal. And everyone would agree ideologically, we would love to have a restored climate and a restored planet. Yeah, I think that was really surprising for me because I didn't anticipate that to be kind of like the reality that we've lived.
I think what was surprising to me about climate restoration is that it's really difficult. I'm kidding. No. What surprised me was to see, especially throughout this EarthX conference, how great of a community, how large a population of people who actually care about the cause is. I mean, starting the NYC chapter, I suppose, to New York City, Y4CR. The Y4CR chapter in New York City, I was expecting, well, actually, I've received a lot of pushback in that it was kind of mostly me setting up with the climate scientist panel or the local school workshops. And so getting to interact with so many other youth in this conference, as well as getting to see all these professionals share about their work and dedication to the cause has really uplifted me so much and has surprised me in a good way.
Alice stole my answer. But yeah, to jump off of you, I agree. I was surprised by how big the community is, especially being here at EarthX. Our climate restoration community is so big, and so many people. There's so many different aspects, the communications, which you do, and there's Deep Green, and we'll learn about whale poop later, and there's Peter doing the research, and there's so many, and there's getting funding and da-da-da. There's so many people working on different puzzle pieces, and I think so to see all of that in action has surprised me most.
That does sound like a happy surprise. And I'd like to open it up to the audience. I see Peter, first of all. And does somebody have a mic? Yes, great.
Yes, right here, Peter.
Peter, by the way, for those of you who have just come, Peter is the founder of the field of climate restoration. He's the first one to put all this together.
Thanks. Thanks you three for being here and the other youth that are here. For the people I'm working with, we're targeting 2030 and say, okay, let's get CO2 level. And I'm 70. In 2030, I'll be 75. I want to have things be done by then. What does it look? And so you can sort of see from my perspective, getting the pilot done is what it begins to look like for it to be done. What does it look like for you to get the job done as youth? To get climate restoration complete, so you can go on and do something new?
Wait, complicated answer, anyone?
I think,
yeah.
Just to clarify, maybe 2030. By 2030, we would love for the goal of all climate action to be climate restoration, and to have the projects that are in development and pilots and perspective now to be basically piloted and ready to scale so that it's actually done by 2050. What does it look like? Yes.
Train is moving by 2030. So, and you're asking that's like the goal for you. And so, what is our long-term goal? Is the question? What do we see?
You've committed a lot of your life to this. Mm-hmm. What does the end game look like to you right now? It'll change, but right now, what does the end game look like for you?
Well, success absolutely looks like, climate restoration being successose looks like us being able to have successful lives. They have to exist at the same time, you know what I mean? Otherwise, we've seen today even those presentations, the tree one stuck out, but lots of, and there's so many, obviously I could go on and on about horrendous climate change effects that are only getting worse and worse. So us being successful with those still existing doesn't look the same, and climate restoration, then a restored climate future, is not horrendous and wildfire full. Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to add on to Kylie really quick. I think that ultimately, for me, success looks like on a global scale, having no one having to deal with the climate movement being an imminent threat on their own life and their own well-being. Not even just their life, just the fact that people would have to migrate if we just leave current CO2 levels is in and of itself a huge detriment to these people's livelihood. globally. And so I think ultimately success to me looks like everyone in the world not being affected at all by the climate crisis, not being negatively affected, not having to worry about it, right? When we see 45% of kids actively youth actively worrying about the climate crisis, having it affect their daily, everyday activities, that's a horrible statistic. And I think success to me just seems like it should be where no one in the world has to worry about the climate crisis. You know, like it's such a crazy reality compared to right now, but I think it's definitely possible.
Whoa, I definitely can't beat that, but whew. But if our expectations are to set short-term goals by 2030, I would probably say that I'd like climate restoration to be a comfortable topic to be discussed with my peers or anybody in the city. I could be like, hey, have you heard the climate news? And they'd be like, yeah, and tell me all about it. So I want it to be a more comfortable topic that I could build my community around with.
Absolutely, well known, yeah.
Love your answers. And another question? Oh, Marcus.
There's one over there too, and I'm done, yeah. All right. I want to know what's your frustration tolerance. You know, a lot of people in my age range, which again is very not old, but in my age range are kind of thinking it's somebody else's problem. And so I can only imagine it's worse when you're younger that, oh, that's, you know, well, they'll figure it out. We're going to party. What's your frustration tolerance? What do you do? What do you encounter? You know?
What do I encounter? I think it's probably media ignorance in that due to climate anxiety or, again, comprehending climate restoration as a difficult topic, people tend to veer away from learning about it and realizing how simple doing one thing a day can actually do to impact the cause, as well as, no, I lost it. Okay, period.
Oh, I mean, I agree completely with Alice. I think like people, especially in our age group, can be very avoidant and kind of think climate restoration is so scary that like we're just going to completely ignore it and hopefully it never really comes to light. And I think we're lucky in some senses that some people have the privilege to be able to do that and block it out completely, because there are parts of the world that absolutely don't have that privilege. And I think that it's the same thing as any sort of media ignorance or media or like active media avoidancy, where you just feel like if it doesn't directly impact me today, right now, I can ignore it. But there's so many people around the world who don't have that same privilege. And so I think it's really important as youth that we understand, and even not as youth, just like everyone in this room, every single age group, every single person should understand that even if it's hard to confront something, there are people who are being forced to confront it. And if you know that you can actively make a difference, if you're a youth who, you know, has the time or has the ability to speak out and speak out against it, I think that ultimately you have to use that power, you know?
I absolutely agree that I feel fatigued by this. Also, there's so many issues to choose from. Sometimes it's like, oh, are people actually going to prioritize, you know, climate change, climate action issues? So hopefully they do. But there's so many things going on in a teenager's life, I'd say, and I feel fatigued, and I feel impatient. Why is this action? We have these answers. Why is it not starting now? You know what I mean? And yeah, I feel like sometimes people feel avoidant and overwhelmed, and I hope that hopefully we can be hopeful and end that overwhelmed sense.
One last.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm just so moved by who you are and your brilliance and your enthusiasm and what you bring is just so amazing. I'm 75 years old. In 2050, I will be 100. I look forward to celebrating this with you and looking back saying, do you remember when? I'll be there with my cane. And like Peter says, it'll be like a blip. Like we remember the AIDS crisis? Maybe you were really young, but do you remember the COVID crisis? We were all scared to death. And now it's like, oh yeah, that thing. When we had, you know, that's what it's going to be like. And brilliant people came together and came up with ideas and got into action and handled it. And then it's this blip. So that's what I see. And you guys are just so amazing. And I want what you're doing to go worldwide. And are you going to tell me about that? Do you have plans for that?
Worldwide plan, that might be above our pay grade. But I look forward to reminiscing with you.
Last year, we attended the global, or at least Y4CR did, we attended the Global Youth Climate Summit, and it was incredible. And yeah, we definitely got a lot of international interest in our organization from that, specifically in countries that are actively being affected by the climate crisis. And we definitely have goals to be able to create kind of these communities and outreach beyond just the US and internationally. Yeah, I guess you'll have to wait to see.
And the last word goes to Alice.
So I just wanted to put this out there that we, the youth, are stepping forward and taking action. It's our voices that are shifting the tide, and we are at the forefront at ensuring that climate gets restored by 2050. How many of us are under the age of 35? Anybody? Yeah. Speak to me after this panel about becoming a part of this movement, because it's ours. And for those of you who are outside of that age range, I'm sorry, but we're going to be having a lot of fun. No, but in all seriousness, you can also support the cause by signing the QR code, which is in the back of our t-shirts. We'll be walking around. You can take a snapshot of those. And we'll be having weekly community, at 4CR, we'll be having weekly community calls at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So also let me know if you're interested in participating in those. So let's be honest, climate restoration can be seen as difficult, daunting even. But if you take a look at it from a different perspective, you'll realize that we have the opportunity to create a flourishing future for a millennia to come. Isn't that exciting? Thank you.